Have you ever felt like you're navigating a major life transition, but for some reason your internal compass just keeps pulling you off course? Like, you know exactly where you want to go, but you end up repeating the exact same self-defeating behaviors. You hit the same emotional roadblocks, and you just can't figure out why. Well, today on The Explainer, we're looking at a pretty powerful framework designed to recalibrate that compass. We're going to get right down to the root of those behaviors by exploring the fascinating world of schema coaching.
Okay, let's dive into this. To make sure we cover everything clearly, we're following a strict 6-step map today. 1. Introduction and definitions. 2. Why schema coaching. 3. Unmet needs and modes. 4. Imagery rescripting. 5. The healthy adult. And 6. Your transformation.
Step 1. Introduction and definitions. Before we get into the schema part, let's just quickly set a baseline for what coaching actually is. So human beings have always looked for mentorship, right? You can think all the way back to Socrates, using those probing questions to spark self-discovery. But coaching as a formal, structured profession, that really only took shape in the late 20th century. A massive influence here was sports psychology. They realized that helping an individual maximize their performance wasn't just about physical skills, it was all about the inner game. It was about developing self-awareness and taking personal responsibility. Fast forward to today, and coaching is essentially a structured process. It uses that Socratic dialogue to help people navigate life transitions, set goals, and really drive personal growth.
Moving on to step 2, why schema coaching? If standard coaching works so well, why do we need a new approach?
Now, what's really interesting about this contrast is where standard coaching stops. Standard coaching is super forward-looking and highly solution-focused. You set a goal, make a plan, execute. Boom. But what happens when you just hit a wall, when deep-rooted patterns, what psychologists call early maladaptive schemas, keep sabotaging your progress? That is exactly where schema coaching steps in. Instead of just surface-level goal setting, it safely explores past wounds without getting overly pathologizing about it. It uses active, experiential methods to actually resolve those root causes. So you aren't just managing those self-defeating patterns, you're literally liberating yourself from them.
Which brings us to step 3, unmet needs and modes. To fix these deep-seated patterns, we have to look at what happens when our early development goes slightly off course.
According to the schema model, there are 5 core emotional needs, and these are completely universal. Every single one of us needs these from infancy. Number 1, secure attachment and safety. We also need autonomy, competence, and a sense of identity. Third, the freedom to express our true needs and emotions. Fourth, spontaneity, play, and joy. And finally, realistic limits and self-control. Now, when these fundamental needs go unmet during our childhood, they form our schemas. Basically, those are the deep-seated, self-defeating patterns that we unknowingly drag right into adulthood. The schema model brilliantly maps out what this looks like in our day-to-day lives. In schema coaching, a mode is basically just the emotional state or coping response that's currently active for you. When everyday problems trigger those unmet childhood needs, we flip into different modes. You might flip into a vulnerable or angry child mode, feeling this super raw emotion. Or maybe you hear this harsh, punitive parent voice in your head. To deal with the pain, you adopt coping responses. Maybe you overcompensate by becoming a massive perfectionist, or you just detach entirely. Usually, it's these exact everyday coping behaviors that finally push someone to seek coaching in the first place.
Step 4, imagery rescripting. We know the theory now, but how do we actually change the script?
One of the absolute coolest, most powerful tools in schema coaching is called imagery rescripting. It's a highly active experiential technique. The coach will ask the client to visualize a painful past event, but not just talk about it academically. They describe it in the first-person present tense. So they might say, I am now 7 years old and I am standing on the sports field. Visualizing this little boy or little girl character is a total game changer. It helps bypass all our adult intellectual defenses so we can directly access the raw emotions tied to those early core memories. And here's where the magic happens. Right before that memory peaks in emotional intensity, the coach asks the client to intervene. They literally rewrite the script. An intervening figure, usually the coach at first or maybe an imagined caring adult, steps into the story to change the ending and finally fulfill that little boy's unmet needs. As one client put it beautifully, imagery rescripting involves taking an image from your memory and working to give it a different context and interpretation, learning to be more compassionate with yourself. It takes a heavy burden from the past and turns it into a pathway for profound self-compassion. Let's move to step 5, the healthy adult.
We're going to bring all this theory into a real-world scenario. Let's talk about John. He's a 40-year-old, highly successful professional, and he's navigating this massive midlife career transition. On paper, the guy should be totally confident, but in reality, he's completely paralyzed by a fear of failure. During schema coaching, John accessed a painful memory from his youth, a devastating failure during a really important sports match where he felt intensely humiliated and totally unsupported. By using imagery rescripting, John stepped into that memory as an adult. He provided that young, little boy version of himself with the exact validation and safety he so desperately needed back then. By reframing that self-defeating memory, John detached his past trauma from his present career change, and he finally got himself unstuck. What John was actually doing there was strengthening what the Schema Coaching Academy calls the healthy adult. You can think of the healthy adult as your brain's mature executive function. It acts as the conductor of your modes. Because look, the goal here isn't to rely on a coach forever. The goal is to become your own coach. When you build up a strong, healthy adult, you realize when your vulnerable child mode is triggered, you catch when that punitive inner critic starts yelling, and like a skilled conductor, you step in, using self-compassion to manage those modes and make absolutely sure your emotional needs are finally being met. Which brings us to our final step. Step 6, your transformation. So the crucial point is this. I want you to point that psychological compass directly at yourself for a second. What are your deep ingrained schemas? What are the patterns that you need to change? Where is your compass spinning in circles in your own professional or personal life? What repetitive, self-defeating behaviors just keep popping up when you're under pressure? Are you overcompensating? Are you detaching? Just identifying those deep ingrained schemas is the absolute first step toward dismantling them. And I'll leave you with this thought. If you could step in as the conductor of your own mind, if you could rewrite the script of your oldest anxieties and finally mate those fundamental needs, how will your life transform as you navigate this change? Because once you clear away those invisible roadblocks from your past, your newly calibrated compass can quite literally take you anywhere. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep reflecting, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.